From 2013 to 2015, Boston's races were funded by Zloop Electronic Recycling, a company that Bob helped establish. In 2015, the company sought protection under Chapter 11 of the United States Bankruptcy Code. In 2018, Bob was sentenced for a long time for the fraud he committed against the firm. There aren't many professional racing car drivers from Maryland, but Boston is one of them. Robert's parents' names are Robert M., Bob, and Karen, and he was born in 1960. He was raised in the Baltimore suburbs of Sparks and Townsend. The gift of a dirt bike on his 5th birthday sparked an early passion for speed for him. When the millennial closed, he took up motocross racing. The Boston team would train at the Maryland State Fairgrounds, but they would have to travel anywhere from 8 to 14 hours to get to the races. He had already won over 300 races around the nation by the time he was 13 years old. After he was run over by a bike and sustained facial injuries, Boston decided to give up motocrossing for good. After seeing a race at Dover International Speedway at the tender age of 16, he made the decision to move to stock car racing. He subsequently attended the prestigious Buck Baker Racing School in Charlotte, where he excelled academically. It was at Legends Cars that stock car racing in Boston got underway. In 2009, he entered and completed 6 races in the USAR Pro Cup Series, with 4 top 10 finishes. Turner Scott Motorsports helped him get into the UARA Stars Late Model Series, where he raced regularly from Maryland to North Carolina. Boston left Washington College soon after his first semester to pursue a career in auto racing in Charlotte. However, support for him dwindled, and he missed the 2010 and 2011 seasons. For his extravagant lifestyle, Robert Boston was found guilty of embezzling money from investors. One of his contributions was to pay for his son's NASCAR trucks racing. The senior Boston was finally apprehended and jailed on charges of wire fraud, securities fraud, and money laundering. The Charlotte Observer reports that Robert has been accused of using over $6 million of his son's racing earnings for his own personal gain. He raced for Kyle Busch Motorsports in the Truck Series for a total of 9 events, after earning enough money in ARCA to make the jump. During his criminal heyday, the government argues Robert Boston pondered buying an island for himself. He took out a $6 million loan from the company to fund Justin's racing career. According to federal officials, Boston wrote, "My son is a professional NASCAR driver. The bright intellect is about to go for a client meeting." Robert paid down his debt despite lavishly spending on a private plane, a Corvette, a Grand Cherokee, and box seats to a North Carolina Panthers game. Boston and his partner Robert Labarge secured capital for their company, Zloop, which specialized in restoring and reselling used devices. In the first year of business, franchises were sold. When Boston's backers started calling for their money back in 2013, he used deceit to get a $14 million loan from a bank. Those who blame Zloop's earlier financial losses on the company's infatuation with a racing point to its early focus on this activity. After the firm was unable to get sponsorship money from Zloop, KBM had to pay off a huge number of employees, including Justin. As a result, Justin, Robert, and Zloop have sued Busch's company, claiming that it has breached the terms of their separate contracts. In October, a judge determined that Justin Boston should pay approximately $450,000 to Kyle Busch Motorsports. Due to the high cost of admission, NASCAR is a tough sport to get into. If it's done with stolen money and becomes known, the cost goes through the roof. While it's true that bad guys have always helped pay for races, no one has come up with a worse idea so far. In order to finance his son Justin's racing career, Robert Boston reportedly lied to investors. The issue of whether or not racing could be used as advertising for a company and how much money should be spent on first-time marketing was debated by witnesses and lawyers for 4 days. Robert Boston was found guilty on many counts, including wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy, by a jury of 12 people on Friday. The judge has postponed the announcement of the sentence until a later date. In certain cases, a person's sentence might be as long as 70 years in jail. The jury, in a trial heard in federal district court, reached a decision after deliberating for a little over 2 hours. According to the U.S. authorities, Boston lied to investors to fund the computer recycling firm Zloop. He and Robert Labarge, the other co-founder of Zloop, have allegedly wasted millions of dollars on a race against Boston's son Justin and a luxury lifestyle. Justin Boston, the son of Robert Boston, was only peripherally engaged in the scam as a result of his driving the Zloop-sponsored racing car. Boston has won 2 ARCA races and finished in the top 10 4 times in the last 9 races in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. Since his NASCAR team, Zloop, went bankrupt in 2015, he has not raced in a race since then. The legal team defending Robert Boston claims that the firm may have been more successful in its early stages if it had not been for malfunctioning equipment. It's not against the law to persist with a company plan that isn't producing results. At the conclusion of his talk, Massachusetts attorney Kevin Tate said, "There is no such thing as a spending crime." It has been shown in court that Zloop paid out a total of $4.9 million to Kyle Busch Motorsports, Joe Gibbs Racing, and Venturini Motorsports. The whole cost of the event, including tickets and extras, is above $6 million. Venturini Motorsports reports that the Zloop brand received nearly $9 million in media attention thanks to the Zloop website, the Zloop 150 ARCA race it sponsored, and other Zloop-related events. In 2013, ARCA broadcasts included Zloop's name or emblem for a combined total of 3 hours and 22 minutes. Federal prosecutors assert that no company would spend more than $6 million on advertising if it had access to just $33 million from investors and $4 million from other parties. Several members of these communities made similar claims, saying that Justin's racing served as an inspiration for criminal behavior. Taylor Phillips, the federal prosecutor, closed his case by arguing that the firm had spent more money on marketing than on running the business. While donations to teams at Bristol, Kentucky, Pocono, and Justin Boston, Zloop is a NASCAR sponsor. A number of claims were filed by them in the Zloop bankruptcy. 9 truck races were staged in Boston in 2015, but it was the last for Kyle Busch Motorsports. Boston and Zloop agreed to pay Justin $3.2 million per year to drive a KBM truck 2 years ago. However, Zloop has stopped providing such payments as of the present. The legal conflict between Boston and Kyle Busch Motorsports was resolved. Zloop filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy because KBM owes $462,500 to creditors. The court sided with them, awarding them $442,561 in damages for their case against Justin Boston. LaBarge has been involved with Zloop from its start. After entering a plea of guilty, he was on the witness stand for over 6 hours as the prosecution tried to show that he would comply with Boston's demands. He advertised anybody considering backing Justin Boston's racing career to ignore Boston's anger at lawyers who investigated his past. After receiving financing from an investor, the company reportedly utilized the money to pay for racing costs and costly benefits for the owners, such as watches. LaBarge said in court that he utilized $1.5 million in investor loans to buy a house and 2 condos. Since the money was utilized to buy shares in the company, the Boston legal team believes their client is the legitimate owner. As part of the settlement, LaBarge agreed to stop mentioning Boston's bankruptcy in any materials presented to potential investors. Further papers, ostensibly signed by LaBarge, but written by the lawyer's client, hammered home the point. Reports that Boston had been sued for fraud and had declared personal and business bankruptcy were trying to be debunked by his legal team. They filed a motion for a fresh trial in order to challenge the verdict. They said that they would appeal the decision. The courtroom was very silent as the judge read his verdict. The North Carolina entrepreneur who stole from investors to support his son's NASCAR dream went to prison. Robert Boston, 54, was reportedly given a 10-year prison term as reported by the Charlotte Observer, including wire fraud, securities fraud, money laundering, and conspiracy. The jury found Boston guilty on all counts. According to a statement issued by the U.S. Attorney's Office, Boston owes the victims over $27 million. Boston saw the launch of the recycling firm Zloop in 2012. He allegedly filed for bankruptcy and deceived franchisees and investors who were unaware of it. His son, NASCAR driver Justin Boston, drove a Zloop-sponsored truck in the Camping World Truck Series. The court records show that Kyle Busch Motorsports canceled the 2-year, $6 million contract in 2015 because the money was still outstanding. Is there another scam in today's NASCAR? Tell us in the comments. Leave a like and subscribe for more videos like this.